Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with our friend Roberta from WellSpan. Remember, she's the woman who does horizon planning. Hello there, my friend.
Hello there, Kelly. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
1st of October. One more quarter to go. We have a new year. Yay. Just hoping 2021 is better than 2020. Kelly, I know all of us are hoping
Yeah,
that. Oh my
yeah,
God.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
We're doing very well. I'm loving this weather.
I know. It's absolutely fantastic.
Gorgeous.
It feels like the season that it's supposed to feel like, and that's all that I can ask for. So,
Yeah. And the harvest moon at night is incredible as it comes up. Oh my. Yeah. I love this time of year.
yep. And I'm gonna sleep with the windows open as long as possible. I say that every year, and then you get that one night, and then that's it forever. You
Yep.
can't open the
It's going
windows.
to be 40 degrees tonight, so it may not be the right night to start.
Oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. It's pretty awesome.
Just get that blanket out of the cedar chest.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So when I was looking at our schedule, because we have this whole list of all the things that we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
because we got to make sure we talk about them all. The thing on today's list is the myths of living wills.
Lots of them out there.
There really are, and I think that this is fascinating. Okay, so one that I used to hear all the time when I was in hospice is that, yeah, they're good to do, but they're so damn hard and they're so complicated that it's just not worth it. That was one that I used to hear all the time, that it's too hard and too complicated, because you're never gonna think of all the scenarios, and then of course something's going to happen to you that's not in the scenarios, and then it was whatever that person didn't like. You're going to get killed by the doctor, you're going to get plugged into all the machines, you're going to whatever that person didn't like. And so I always thought that was sort of interesting, because that was never true. What other myths have you, or do you talk about when you do these presentations to people?
Well, one of them is if I talk about death, I'll bring death on. And so I
Right.
talk about dying and being in an end of life crisis to create these documents. Otherwise, I would bring it on. So, with that logic, all of us who attend funerals should be dead already. I mean, if you've attended one funeral, you should not have survived that funeral.
Right.
Anytime a loved one has died, the rest of us should have died around them, because if we talked about dying, then we would die from it. And it's just fear. And I have to tell you a story. I have a colleague who shared a story with me that she'd been trying for years to get her parents to fill out their living wills. And that was the myth. If I talk about it, somehow I'm going to bring it on, until one of her parents had a heart attack and was in the hospital, and they were in crisis because they'd never talked about it. And the person had no paperwork. And all of a sudden it was, oh my gosh, I wish I had listened to you and done this so that we all knew what to do for me.
Yeah.
So that, you weren't all panicked, and I could just relax because I knew you all would help and talk about it.
Right.
I've also, have situations, the same kind of thing. They've had the documents available to them, and for whatever reason, I'll get to it. I have a patient who is been readmitted several times in this year and is in an end-of-life crisis, has never done a document, and their spouse doesn't know what to do, because without a document, we're going to hook that person up to a machine and keep them alive until you have to make that decision that enough is enough. And that decision is long in coming, because without a document, we don't have a choice as your medical provider.
Right.
So some people will tell me, well, living wills, I don't want to give a doctor a living will because, they'll just stop treatment because
Right.
they want to ration care.
Right.
They don't want me to have care. They want to save that care for somebody else that's more worthy.
Yep.
And that's not the case ever, ever, ever. So we will only use that living will when it's an end of life crisis. And 2 physicians have said they don't expect you to survive that situation. So I hear these stories of people saying, well, we had a living will, but it was never consulted. It wasn't followed. It wasn't followed because it wasn't clear that it was an end of life situation that the person wasn't going to survive from. And if you thought it should be applied at the time, then as the durable power of attorney, you have an obligation to the person you're representing to be their advocate and to say, why aren't you using my loved one's living will? It says clearly here that they don't want this to happen. So why as their physician are you doing this? You have a right as the person's durable power of attorney to be their advocate, to question what is going on. You don't have to just stand by and just let a doctor do whatever that doctor wants.
Right.
You have a right to have a second opinion because it takes a second opinion to have a living will implemented. So those are things we don't know. And it's because we don't know them, then we hear these stories and those stories become the myths of, well, if I have a living will, then they're going to starve me to death.
Right.
They're not going to give me water. They're not going to give me treatments that I should have.
Right.
That is never
I'll
the
die
case.
in pain. I've heard that one too. If I have a living will, I'll die in pain.
Yeah. And we do everything to make sure the patient is comfortable.
Right.
And you have a choice. You can say all the time in your living will, do you want full treatment? Do you want limited treatment? Do you want comfort care only? Now, Kelly, I didn't say no treatment.
Right.
I said comfort care only. So we always keep a patient comfortable, out of pain, if at all possible. Mm-hmm. And it's always possible to keep the person out of pain as long as we have some way to communicate that. Mm-hmm. And we'll provide whatever treatment makes sense. Sometimes we'll offer treatments that may not make sense, but we're always bringing hope unless that person has a living will and has already said to us, even without the living will, if I get in this condition, I don't want to do anything more. If I'm 98 years old and you want to recommend that I continue to get cancer treatments, I don't know that living another 6 months is really in my best interest for the quality of life that I want.
Yeah. Another myth that I experienced when I was in hospice was people would talk about that if they got a living will, there would be too much fighting.
Oh my, yeah. Yeah.
Like, and they were always talking about family, that there would just be too much fighting. So if I don't get one, then it'll be easier. And
oh my gosh, Kelly, there's more fighting when
I was like, wait, I think that we got to look at this a whole other way because that's a little.
But here's the thing. Yeah. Here's the thing. In the past, and probably in many healthcare systems, we're trying to not do this. In the past, people would get their living wills from their attorney.
Yeah.
The attorney, it's a legal document. So what do you do with your legal documents? You don't share them with the world. You lock them away in a safety deposit box or in a safe in the basement of your house. Yep. You haven't shared them with your family. You haven't talked about them.
Right.
That is why there's more conflict over a living will, because you haven't had a conversation with your loved ones to say, here's who I trust the most to speak for me. Here's who's second. Here's who's third, but only if those other 2 people can't speak for me for whatever reason. And here is what I want you to do for me. Here's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to do this and not that, but only when I'm in this kind of condition.
Right.
Or if I don't have any hope for living any kind of quality of life. If I can't speak to you, if I can't brush my own hair, if I can't sit down at the dinner table, if I can't play with my great-grandchildren, don't bring me back from something because I don't want to be a burden. That's what's missing.
Yeah.
It's not the document itself. It's that the document hasn't been discussed so that people can say, but mom, but dad, but brother, why would you pick that?
Right.
And you can say to them, because I wouldn't pick it for myself. That's what's in there.
Right.
That's what's behind that statement.
Right.
I wouldn't pick that for myself. So why in the world are you picking it for you?
Right.
Because I'm different than you.
Right.
Because for me, this is my quality of life. This is what I want to be able to do in my last days. I don't want to be in an ICU. I don't want to not have my family around me, particularly with COVID-19.
Right.
I do want to be at home. I do want to be cared for there. I do want palliative care. I do want hospice care. I do want treatment as long as my doctor thinks it can help. But when he thinks or she thinks it can't help, then I want it removed.
Right.
You know, those are the options we have, and people don't have these conversations. They don't give their loved ones documents. I tell people, even if they're not your durable power of attorney, even if they're your fourth cousin and they live in California, send them a document, because you know they're going to be the person to fly in and say, you know, Aunt Mary said,
Right.
if mom ever got in this situation, I was to come and say, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Well, Aunt Mary doesn't have a say.
Right.
I have
Right.
to say,
Right.
no, we're not doing that,
Yeah.
because this is what our loved ones said and showed us and discussed with us. And it's what they wrote. It's what they want. And that's my job.
When you spend time around people who are dying, and you know, essentially dying is what your business is, it changes your perspective on how all that stuff is. And you also realize that Americans are horrible at death.
Oh my gosh, our
We're
culture is
terrible
terrible.
at it. And I think that's why a lot of these myths exist, because we're just, we don't talk. I mean, like if there are other people from like different countries or different cultures who are watching this, and they're like, you people think that if you talk about death, you'll bring it? Like, they're like, well, that's the dumbest thing in the world. But that is, I mean,
yeah.
Most older people believe that. Like, no.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those things. And I think that's always been fascinating to me, that like as Americans, we're so good at so many things, but death is not one of them.
Right. And in all the stories that I hear all the time, I never hear anybody say when they get in that crisis and they haven't done the documents, oh, I'm so glad I didn't do those documents.
Right.
Really.
Right.
I mean, they always say, if only
Yeah.
I had done that when you had asked me to do that, if only I had followed through on it. And it's just, you know, we just don't talk about any part of this. So the problem is, most of us don't even know what the living will is. We always confuse it with that last will and testament.
Yeah.
We don't know what a healthcare agent is supposed to do. We don't know what authority we can give them. We don't know what decisions they'll have to make. And being able to do this when you're well or relatively well, when you're not in a crisis, is so much easier than when everybody is huddled around your bed and you can't speak for yourself, and they don't really know what to do. It is such a burden to leave to your family. And it truly is quality of life. So one of the things that I do often in my presentations is I will ask people at the very end, write on a piece of paper for me how you want to die. So just tell me. So Kelly, if I ask you, how do you want to die? If you could give me 2 words, what would be the 2 words that you would use?
Pain-free with dignity.
There you go. Peaceful, surrounded by family, with God, being prayed for, having music. I have never, ever, ever seen anyone put up on the board in the ICU. hooked up to a machine,
Right.
dying in pain.
Right.
It's always pain-free, with dignity, with family, with friends, comfortable, peaceful. Peaceful is always the big word. If you're doing an anagram, it's always the center word is peaceful. And so that's what this work helps us to do as human beings. This work of having these conversations with ourselves to really think through what's my quality of life that I want when it comes to the end. That end may be tomorrow because of an auto accident. It may be 10 years from now because of cancer. It may be when I'm 120 and I'm just old and frail. I just don't know, and I'm never going to know. So just like you buy car insurance for the if and maybe you get in a car accident.
Right.
You buy health insurance for the if and maybe you end up in the hospital with a catastrophic illness. This is an if and maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not maybe, it's when.
Right. Because
Because once you're born, you don't escape death. Unfortunately, not yet. Anyway.
There's one other myth that also came up a lot in hospice, and that was people who felt marginalized by the system. So whether it was people of color or LGBTQ or
people with disabilities.
People who were poor, people with different religions that other people might not have liked. And so anybody who felt marginalized was concerned. They didn't feel comfortable doing paperwork like this for the people who have marginalized them forever, because they felt like even if they went through all the work to do it, it wouldn't be honored.
Yeah.
And that was always it's challenging to talk about this stuff anyway, but that always added a whole other layer to it, because then you had to talk through I know, you have been marginalized, and it was a horrible thing for all of those reasons that you were marginalized.
And it's still happening, Kelly. It is still systemic racism in healthcare is still happening, unfortunately.
Right.
And
so my patients who were Black were like, why would I do this? You're just going to treat me like dirt anyway, like you always have. So why should I even do this? And I was like,
for your family.
I get it. But let's talk. And that took time.
Yeah.
Energy, patience, love, hugging, and beverages in order to be able to get through a lot of that, in order to go, okay, you're right, I get it. And sometimes you couldn't get that far.
Right.
And so that
we
was
have a long way to go. It is our time now to really begin to face all of the systemic racism. COVID is disproportionately affecting communities of color.
Yeah.
Healthcare does not have an equal playing field for the rich and the poor. Mm-hmm. It's why the Affordable Care Act was so beneficial, because it brought care to so many millions of people that have had no insurance at all.
Right.
And so those conversations take time.
Yeah.
And those conversations need to be held many times, I feel, with people from the community.
Yep.
So oftentimes I will engage the African American and Hispanic churches and church leadership who can speak to this from a position of faith as well as health. But it's a gift to your family. So without it, your family is stuck without being able to influence anything. With it, your family can protect you, can advocate for you, can say exactly what you want and make sure that you can get it.
Yeah.
Without naming that person that you trust the most, no one can speak for you. I mean, that's the thing I think people don't understand. Just because you're married doesn't give you the right to speak for somebody else in healthcare.
Right.
Everybody is protected in that way. Mm-hmm. You can't even your adult children. You might be their parent, but once they're an adult, unless they name you, you don't have any specific rights.
Yeah.
There's a hierarchy to become a health representative, but as a healthcare representative, you have to go to court and have the court make the decision about whatever it is you'd want to do for your loved one. And that's expensive. That's $10,000 to $15,000 3 months later.
Right.
When, you know, your loved one may be suffering on a ventilator that's just making them worse and not better.
Right. Yeah. So those were always the ones that, you know, when you are talking to people and you're close, you're making those last final decisions that we faced a lot. And we would talk about, I know we're going to talk about this in upcoming episodes, but we would always say to those families, I will walk with you. I will do everything you need. I will be with you. I mean, all of us said that, no matter what our role was in hospice. We all said, I will be with you. You want to call me at 2:00 in the morning because something's going down and you need help? The answer is I will help you do that. Yeah. Then we would make sure that all their documents, we had all their documents, and we did all that stuff. And that was some of the only way that people felt.
It's all relationship, and it's being a true ally. People know whether you're an ally or not, and whether or not you're real and committed to making sure. And there are many, many, many of us in healthcare, and really, it's our oath to provide the care that's necessary. And I cannot undo the systemic racism, but I think recognizing that it does exist. And I heard you say that over and over. You're right. You're right. You're right. To be able to say that to somebody with all humility for how my whiteness, my privilege, my silence may have enabled this to continue. I'm saying right now, I'm on your side. I will help you. I will advocate for you. I will make sure you have the right documents for the right time. So not only a living will, but when you get to that last year of life because of an illness, then you also want a physician order for life-sustaining treatment. Right. It's a bright pink document we're going to talk about that helps you when you get transported, because living wills can only be used in a healthcare setting, can't be used when you're being transported by an ambulance. And so then you need another document to help you do that. That's a physician order. Can be done by an advanced practice clinician, a nurse practitioner, physician assistant. You can have it filled out by a nurse or a social worker or a chaplain, but it's always co-signed. Those are all important documents to have to overcome these myths and to uncover them. Yes. That's the other thing, and you're in my job is to uncover them. So when somebody says, oh no, I don't need that. Oh no, we don't talk about that. Yeah. Oh no, I'll do that someday, but I don't need that now. Yeah. Then we have to be able to say, well, what causes you to hesitate? Why not now? I mean, what is later going to do for you? Help me understand that. And here's the consequence of later. So if you didn't realize that was a consequence, would you want to change your mind? Or is there something else that's stopping you from doing this? To try to uncover those myths, to try to get people to really explain what's keeping them. And doing this work, I'm always amazed, complete strangers, with the right kind of prompting, will just tell me their whole life story. It's so wonderful. I feel so blessed all the time to have that trust. Yep. And for them to say, my family's dysfunctional, this happened. This is what happened to my parents. This is the guilt I still feel over what I did or didn't do. Yep. So
I was a witness to many things that I was like, there have been times where I've said, are you sure you want to tell me all these things? It's totally okay. I'm going to hold them and keep them. But and they're like, and then, people sometimes forget. They forget that they've told you all of those things. And they're like, but then it's the best thing is to watch their face after they've done it, because not only their face, their whole body just goes,
relaxes. They've unburdened themselves from things that they've carried around and haven't had anybody else who could listen in the way that you and I or anybody else who does this work can listen. Yeah.
I think that, having all these ducks in a row, it will change your physicalness. I mean, not only your mental, it'll change your physical, your being, because the angst of it will be done.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to worry because I see that it improves relationships in families too, because then you're not constantly worried. You're not constantly trying to prod something out of somebody. And we have documents, we have booklets and training materials and just help.
Right.
We have a whole packet that anyone can order off of our website. Go to Horizon Planning on wellspan.org. If you're a WellSpan patient and you have the My WellSpan portal, go to the Horizon Planning page there. It's part of the quick links. Get the materials that can help you have these conversations and also can teach you why those myths really don't make sense.
Yeah.
And aren't true, many of them.
Yeah.
So, yes.
It's awesome.
Awesome. Another awesome conversation, Kelly. You're
always
so fabulous. I love it.
If you were watching are thoughtful about, some myths that you have and you want to just put them in the comments, let us know. We'll talk about those next week. I mean, we will certainly come back to those, like, I heard that. Or even if you think that, if you want to blame it on your best friend, feel free. My best friend said, yes, totally all right.
Or any experience or any question that's come up over these last few weeks that we've been doing this, please share them with us so that we can address them for you. We'd love to.
Always. Thank you so much. See you, my friend.
Namaste. My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.